Welcome back to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLaren, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. I'm excited to share this story with you, so let's dive in. All right, for those who are watching live, this is actually a double header today. It is my pleasure to bring on the show Nancy, and I did it again. I didn't actually ask the correct pronunciation of your last name.
Nancy
Pickard. I was like, it's like Jean-Luc Picard kind of thing.
Yep.
It seems to be the theme in my podcast here. Sometimes I forget to ask people how to correctly pronounce their last name, but I do like to get it right. So welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you've got a great story as well. I think there's some really, really cool things that you've done in your life, and I'm excited to kind of explore that. But I always like to kind of begin with where you're presently at. What are you doing now? And then we get to take a look at the journey that you've been through, this winding path of life to get you to where you are presently. So what are you up to currently?
So I'm a internationally best-selling author of the book Bigger,
Cool.
Better, Braver. And so I'm doing that. I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of speaking engagements. And I'm mainly a one-on-one life coach, but I do group coaching. I do it for Bigger, Better, Braver, and reinvention. And also I have a class that's starting February 15th. So if anybody is interested, it's called the New Relationship Blueprint. So it's how to redefine relationships. What's the new paradigm? How do you make yourself a priority? How do you set healthy boundaries? How do you hold yourself in warm regard while you're, cherishing your partner as well? And so it's a great 12-week course that I'm doing. And I have a mailing list and all of that you could do that.
Well,
so I do a lot of that, but mainly, and I've started doing relationship and marriage counseling coaching. That's new for me with Terry Real, and he's amazing. His work is amazing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but so that's the newest thing. I'm in a 2-year program. I'm 1 year in, but I'm already working with couples, and it's very different than working one-on-one for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely challenging as well. I think you're well suited for the kind of work that you're doing, and really that part of that is because of what you've been through in your own kind of life journey. And so if we kind of rewind the clock a bit here, because I often wonder when people find themselves doing what they're presently doing, growing up, was this like this idea that you had that I'm going to be like a best-selling author and relationship and life coach, or what did you really envision your life starting out as when you were younger?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and
Okay.
I now live in California in Aspen, Colorado. Those were nowhere near what I thought I'd be doing with my life at all. And to be honest with you, I grew up in an era where being a wife and mother was still what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah.
And the whole fairy tale, find my prince, live happily ever after, be a good partner, be a good wife, be a great mother. And that really is still at the core of who I am. And yet I've moved so far beyond that because I got married at 21, right out of college. And I was married for 26 years, very happily, two sons. And that defined me. But really, I was very other referenced. So I saw my self-worth from how other people, especially my ex-husband, saw me. So fast forward 26 years, great life, when he no longer wanted to be married, then instead of me recognizing that it was him, he ended up with somebody 23 years younger than me and him, and 2 years older than our son. That had nothing to do with me, but it actually took me down to my knees, and it took me a really long time to crawl back out, to find my soul again and who I was and my own worth. And so it's really easy for me to help others who have had similar stories, and also to help young women in their 30s or early 40s who aren't married yet or haven't found their voice and haven't made themselves a priority and set healthy boundaries. I've been on both ends. And so that makes it really easy for me to help other people.
Right. Yeah. So you're married at 21. Was this when you graduated college that you got married? Like how did you and your husband or ex-husband, sorry, like meet each other? How did that happen?
Well, we actually met around a fountain at the University of Buffalo because I had
Okay.
just gotten a brand new puppy,
Okay.
and I was there with the puppy, and he walked over to me and said, "Is that an Airedale?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I used to have an Airedale," and I started to just meet him there every day for like a week with this
Mhm.
other guy. I never knew which one of them liked me. It was really a funny story, but that was it,
Okay.
you know.
Okay. So a puppy by a fountain while you were in university.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what were you studying at university?
I have a master. At that time, I got a BA in psychology and sociology, and then
Yeah.
after I got married, I got a master's in education.
Okay. Yeah. And I always find interesting when let's say people study psychology, because to me it's a fascinating topic, sort of understanding the brain and patterns of behavior and why we do what we do. Um, but I often wonder how many people study psychology because they want to know more about themselves. And for you, what was it that drew you to wanting to study psychology?
I just was really interested in interpersonal relationships and people, and I don't even know what I thought I was going to do with it because you can't really do much with a BA in psychology. You really have to go beyond it. But it actually has helped me. If you looked at the trajectory of my whole life,
Hmm.
I have a degree in psychology and sociology. Then I got a master's in education. And then I opened a personal training gym. And
Hmm.
I was a trainer and gym owner for 16 years. And so at that point, I was helping people from the outside, right? Outer fitness. And
Hmm.
now I do inner fitness. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I also still work with people in health and wellness and holistic lifestyle, but it, I never know what's coming next. I didn't have that plan.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but they all line up.
Yeah. So you'd studied this, and as you touched on, like there isn't really a lot of professional opportunities for just a BA in psychology, because if you're going to work in that field as a clinical practitioner, generally you have to go a step further, and
Right.
you probably get like a PhD for most people. So you then settled into, you were married, and I'm guessing you started a family,
Right.
and and at what point did you decide that you were gonna did the master's in education come first, or were you did you do your personal training first?
No, no. I got my master's in education. I got my master's, and I literally walked out of the last class of my master's 9 months pregnant, and
Okay.
gave
Wow. Okay.
birth to my son. So I never really used it until my kids were in like at least elementary school. And then I just taught nursery school for 5 or 6 years. And then my husband and I, we had a beautiful home, and we built this huge Cybex gym as part of our home. And then I just
Okay.
thought, I'm just going to go and get certified. And the amount of 3 months that it took me to get certified was what it took us to build the gym. And for six
Okay.
years, I had this beautiful gym in my home, and everybody in the community came to me. I had men early in the morning. I had teachers after school. I had high school kids, and then I had like people that didn't work during, off hours during
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Okay. So and where were you settled at this time,
New
where you had the
Jersey,
gym in your house?
New
New
Jersey.
Jersey. Okay. Just south of New York there. Yeah, yeah. And what did you love most about working with people in personal training? You did that for 16 years.
I loved it. I loved it. I'm really good at it. I like to be in control. I like to tell people what to do. Um, and I loved it. I mean, I was fit as could be, and I worked out
Yeah.
with everybody, and I listened to everybody's issues, and it was great. I loved every minute of it. I really loved every minute of it. But when I got divorced, I eventually sold my house and I sold my gym. And then I moved to Aspen, Colorado, and I didn't go back to being a trainer. There were a lot of
Mhm.
trainers here, really fit, amazing trainers. And financially, I was, solvent, and I didn't really want to take away from other trainers. And
Mhm,
so
mhm,
I did fundraising. I didn't really work for 9 years until I was in another serious relationship. And when that one broke up, I thought, wow, the universe is trying to tell me something here. There's something I need to know. It can't just be that I have a bad picker, right? And I have to figure it out. And I got myself a Healing Your Heart coach. That was my first certification. And so I got one, and I decided to become one. And
mhm, mhm,
that started me down. That was probably 8 certifications ago. So I keep adding tools to my toolbox. I keep, if I get a client that has an issue that I'm not really prepared to do, I will go get certified in something else
mhm,
so that
mhm.
I can bring those tools back in. And
Yeah.
it
So,
kept going.
yeah. So to bring it back just a little bit here, because it's funny, we can often gloss over like a decade with the wave of a hand, and so you were doing this training for 16 years, and then came to the divorce. Um, you know, you were married for 26 years to your ex-husband, and along the way, like, was there any indications that you could observe where things weren't quite as rosy as you seemed, or
Mm-mm.
did it seem to come out of the blue from your perspective?
Yeah. He had a classic midlife crisis. There was some emotional stuff that happened with his mom that brought stuff back to him, and that just changed who he was. And
Hmm.
he was never the
That,
same again. Yeah.
yeah, and that's quite fascinating. And you have, with this background in psychology, maybe watching this unfold. And what was sort of the time frame that this unfolded, like this midlife crisis hits to, we're no longer going to be together and we're separating.
There was 11 months from the time that
Okay.
he said he was unhappy
Mhm.
to the time that I finally called uncle.
Okay. Yeah. And ultimately that was your decision, was it?
Well, I just gave up. I
Yeah.
stood on my head do remember the movie The King and I? And he kept saying, "How low can you go?" The woman kept having to like be lower than him, and then he would sit, and then
Mhm,
she'd have to get lower. She was finally on the floor. That's how I felt for those 11 months. Like, what else could I do to try to keep my family together and win this
mhm.
man back? And there was
Right.
nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And I pulled out all the stops. I literally gave up who I was to just try to be anything he wanted me to be. And
Mm-hmm.
after 11 months, I just said, okay, you know.
Yeah, and to shine a light on something here, I think you touched on something really important. I think it's worth unpacking just a little bit here. You gave up on who you were and tried to be whatever it was that he wanted you to be in order to try to hold things together. And I think that seems like a natural response from somebody who wants to keep this together. Until maybe a light went on, you realized that like you were not the problem, and there was nothing you could do to satisfy that. You know, did you know what what went click when you realized I'm not going to be able to be whatever this man wants me to be at this point in time?
Nothing really clicked for me at the time. I wasn't doing work on myself.
Mm,
I mean, I think I was seeing a therapist as we were losing our marriage. It was much later because
okay,
he had this big psychological crisis. I could put all the attention onto that.
right,
Um,
right.
but as the years went on, I was able to see that I actually overloved him and overdid for him. And that becomes boring.
Hmm, hmm.
That actually, I didn't, there was no like men like to hunt, there was no
Yeah,
hunt
yeah,
in that. And
yeah.
I lost myself because I saw myself through his eyes. It was much later when I was really doing the interpersonal work that I actually remembered who I am, that
Hmm,
honestly, I
hmm.
am way stronger emotionally than that man will ever be on his best day. And
Mhm.
I could once again trust who I was. And here I
Yeah.
am, I'm living
Yeah.
I've got a great partner. I have 4 grandchildren. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro at 61 years of age. I've got an internationally best-selling book. I'm rocking my life, and
Mhm.
I love my life,
Yeah.
and I'm first in my life. Like, I really know that I have to take care of my own needs first so that I have left over for everybody else in my life. And
Yeah. It's the classic, we can't pour from an empty glass. And
right.
so when you look back, because it's maybe easier with hindsight, you know, would you say, looking back, that you observed maybe over the course of the marriage that you were losing any sense of your identity, or this really only starts to take place when it became clear the relationship was in crisis?
I used to think that I was such a powerful woman because I had this partner. I
Hmm.
truly believed that I was half of a whole
Hmm.
instead of whole on my own.
Hmm.
So it wasn't that I didn't do some really big things. I was a huge fundraiser. I was a marathon runner, right? I had my
Hmm.
gym, but I always thought that I was that capable because I was half of a whole. And
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
a long time to realize that I'm whole all by myself. I am worthy because I'm on this earth and I breathe. And so is everybody else.
So you're in your at that time you were in your mid 40s
Right.
when this is taking place, and that's maybe really in many different senses of the word a transitionary phase in life as it is. And you said at a certain point in time, after 11 months of trying to salvage what you could, you cried uncle and said, "Look, I can't save this. I can't save this man. I can't save this relationship." You know, in sort of the aftermath of that, where did you go?
I didn't go anywhere for a couple of years. I stayed in my home in New Jersey. I still ran my gym. Um, but I actually got a like a second home in
Mhm.
Aspen because I wasn't brave enough to leave New Jersey yet. That's where I raised my kids. One was still, they were both just getting to college. And
Okay, yeah,
I didn't want to leave and I was afraid to leave, but I wanted someplace else. And then
okay,
fast forward a few years, I put my house on the market. And when it sold, I was already dating a man in Aspen. And so I thought, all right, I've already got the place and the man in Aspen. I'll go there. And if it doesn't
yeah.
work and I don't like it, then I'm going to, move on.
So how it's interesting to me again, just like how do you so you bought this place in Aston while still living in New Jersey? I mean, the housing market maybe was different then than it is now,
Huge.
and
Huge.
and maybe Aspen wasn't. How did you pick Aspen?
Well, I was a trainer, right? I was very
Yeah.
athletic. So my sister and her husband had a place in Val, and I went to Val thinking that's where I would go. And Val is like not a real, it's dead. We went on July 4th, and by 7 o'clock at night, we couldn't find a restaurant. And I was with 2 girlfriends, and one of them had gone to Aspen for years. She said, let's just get in the car tomorrow, and you have to see Aspen before you buy something in Val. It's not like a real town. It's sort of just a resort. And
Yeah.
we went to Aspen. Aspen on July 4th is like is like a town on steroids. I mean, everybody in
Right. Right.
the world is part of the parade. It's unbelievable. There were so many people and it was so happening. And that was it. I bought a condo. And yes, I could not buy my condo today. And it's the prices. You're going back to 2005.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So, honestly, from a little girl from Buffalo who knew nothing about Aspen, that was
Yeah.
that was like an amazingly great financial move on my part.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good that you had a couple of close friends with you on this trip as well.
Mhm.
So then, did you divide your time? Like, I would spend some time in Aspen, some time back in New Jersey.
Well, in those years, I only came here for I came maybe 3 or 4 times a year for a week. I really
Okay.
and then I met my partner before the one I have now, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I moved here full time. And then I
Okay.
only lived here. And I did
Yeah.
that for 6 years. Actually, I did
And
that for 8 years.
your previous partner there, how did you end up meeting him?
Um, his ex-wife, who they had just gotten a divorce, called me and asked me if I would go out with him.
And how did you know his ex-wife?
Because they also came from New Jersey. So I didn't
Oh,
know
okay.
her, but we knew people in common.
Right. Okay. Isn't that fascinating?
Mhm.
The thing, I think back to like the movie 6 Degrees of Separation, that
Yeah.
like we're only ever, and so what prompted her to reach out to you and say, we're separating or divorcing. I feel like you would be a good match for him or something
They
like
were
that.
divorced, and she had a boyfriend, which is why they got divorced in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he's very shy,
Yeah.
and she probably felt bad. And she didn't want, part of her explanation was that she didn't want some of the Aspen women who were going to come crawling out of the woodworks to like take advantage of him. And I was
Wow. Okay.
this New Jersey girl who we had friends in common who told them I was level-headed, I was a good person.
Right. Right.
That was it.
Okay. How about that? What an observation. I mean, I'm not sure what it was saying about the character of the women in Aspen, if they were going to come crawling out of the woodwork or something along those lines. But
That's,
maybe
you know,
maybe more assertive or something like that. And he was just a very easygoing,
yeah,
sort of quiet.
yeah.
Yeah.
She was trying to be like Mother Cub.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of nice in regards. But how does it feel on your end when someone's like, hey, I want to set you up with this person because
I didn't know
you're
any
like,
here. I was
okay,
fine with it. And
yeah,
I had her permission, right?
right, right.
So it wasn't like people back in New Jersey were going to say, she didn't waste any time, right?
Right,
I
right.
had her permission. She set
Yeah,
it up.
yeah. So you ended up, and at this point in time, you've obviously you've moved on from your previous marriage there. So you're feeling, yeah. And so you're like, okay, I'm ready to get back into a relationship again. What was it about this gentleman that drew you? Said, hey, you know what, this guy's a good guy.
Well, because he is a good guy.
Yeah,
He's a good guy. He's fun. He's very shy. He looked at you like with great warm eyes. Um, and we had a really nice relationship for 6 years, but
yeah,
that one died too. And so life
yeah,
goes on. I mean, I'm 66 years old. I've been in a relationship for almost 7 years. I'm very happy. We're really good partners.
yeah,
We're very equal. But I don't ever think there's an age limit on new relationships or new careers or adding to what
yeah.
you're doing. It's not an age thing for me.
Yeah, yeah. Which and so obviously at some point in time in this relationship with this previous gentleman who seemed like he's a very kind and a good man, but it became clear that this isn't the right fit for you.
Right.
Um, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm guessing that this was your decision or your realization that it feels like this relationship isn't the right fit for you.
No,
Is that
no, he 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 wasn't a really happy individual.
okay?
And he started to get to a point in his life where I think he just thought like the world was coming to an end, and that
Mm,
whole thing, like you needed to leave the country and you needed all of that kind of a thing. And it consumed him. It just took him over.
okay.
And so the relationship just didn't survive.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is kind of fascinating in one sense. That you've had these two experiences where maybe you were like, because you described your marriage of 26 years up until that point like being a pretty happy marriage,
Very
and
happy.
then like some sort of psychological crisis happens with your partner, and then all of a sudden it's crumbling and falling apart. And it seems like there's, I don't know how much you could say they're identical, but there's some similarities there, some crossover there, where again they reached a point in time where the individual's having some kind of personal crisis. It can maybe be connected to psychology as well, and you're watching this play out again. Was there any sense of deja vu here, or
No, but now I can tell you this, that wherever you go, there you are. I was a people pleaser. So I loved men who I thought I could save. So
interesting?
I was not getting emotionally whole men at the time. Both of those men needed boosting, ego, self-confidence. I was that person. Like when I first started dating the second man that I'm talking about, there were, I had a lot of relationships in between, but those were the main ones. He told me he'd never been happy a day in his life. He was
Wow.
some odd years old. And to my ears, I'm like, you haven't met me. I can.
Right.
So I was a people pleaser. I was a conflict avoider. I would take charge. That was my job. I don't do that anymore. I've hung up my cape. I'm not Superwoman. So my partner today we're equals. He's very self-assured. He's very confident. He doesn't need fixing. He wouldn't let me fix him either, I will add.
Right. Yeah.
We don't need fixing. We're partners. We cherish each other. We hold ourselves in warm regard, and we hold each other in warm regard. It's a very healthy relationship.
Which is fantastic to hear. And so after this second relationship, or this second, I guess you can call it, say, major relationship ended, it seemed like at that point you realized maybe I need to do a bit of soul searching. Were you starting to wonder, like, am I the common thread in the failures of these two significant relationships?
Well,
or what's kind of
common thread? I am the common thread. We are the single denominator in all our relationships, right? So that's who we are. Wherever we go, there we are. So you have to look at yourself. That's part of my whole new course, is seeing what you've been doing, what are the patterns, who are you attracting, so that you can change what you're doing, or you're just going to end up there, different guy, saying new day, same situation.
Yeah. And so what realizations did you come to about yourself at this point in time? What was like, aha, okay, I see.
I was a people pleaser, that I tried to build up everybody else and tried to take care of everybody else, and that I was attracting into my life men that needed saving. I don't do that anymore.
Where do you suppose that, if again we're looking back through the lens or the benefit of hindsight, but where do you suppose that might have come from? This desire to please people, to try to save people. Do you have any insight on that?
I think it's very common for women. I think women are brought up that their needs are not as important, that love and life means taking care of their partner and their family, that their needs don't come first. So I was raised on it.
Now, would you say, because I'm a parent, I have a toddler, and my wife's amazing. she's a great wife and a great mother. But I think my observation is that motherhood is probably seems like probably the most selfless occupation, in a sense, because it does require, almost out of necessity, so much giving of self. And of course, when you have this little human being that really can't survive independently, and I try to pull my weight as well. I joke that she took care of the input, so I take care of the output, sort of thing. But it seems like, especially for those who've gone through motherhood, like you go through this part of your life, these number of years in your life, where it's almost a necessity that to some degree your needs come second. And I wonder, maybe there's been this pattern that gets passed on from generation to generation, like this is just how it was, or this is how it is. Do you see any of that?
True. But I do think, like, I have 2 sons and married, and I have 4 grandchildren. And I think women and men today are not the same as they were 40 years ago. I think men are doing more. The
Yeah.
patriarchal old regime does not hold up. Women don't go for it.
Yeah.
Women demand a lot more equality, even if they're stay at home. They demand
Mhm.
a lot more equality, and most women are getting back out in the workforce, and so there has to be more eventually, a change in command and sharing. And I think it's different. I'm still from the old patriarchal where, men were up here and women were down here, and it just doesn't that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So in your journey here, so now you're in your, I guess, mid 50s at this point, and you're
This point.
now at the point of the second relationship, sort of maybe
Oh,
back to that,
yeah, yeah.
and then so now you're realizing I have to kind of go on this journey of like self-discovery, of uncovering like what is it about me, and how do I, did you have any idea where to start? Did you dig back into your background in psychology, or how did you know kind of where to go to start looking to rectify this pattern that you had in your life?
Somebody had recommended Debbie Ford's book called The Spiritual Divorce, and I
Mhm.
got the book, and then I got a spiritual divorce coach, and that started the whole thing. When I read the book,
Fascinating.
I said, I'm going to get myself a coach and I'm going to become a coach. And I had not really been in the workforce for 9 years. And I knew that I had a lot more to give and to offer than I was using. I wasn't utilizing my gifts. I wasn't living up to the best of my ability. And I knew it, but in that relationship, he also was retired. So we were traveling a lot and playing a lot, and I didn't want to do anything differently. So that also just reminded me that I have way more to offer and to do and to give back.
Yeah.
And now I do it on a daily basis.
That's so. What a fascinating term, spiritual divorce. What is it? How would you summarize that in your words? Like, what is it referencing? Something like a spiritual divorce.
It's about recognizing that there are gifts and lessons in everything that happens to you, and that you
Mhm.
attracted that partner into your life like a lock and a key. Your wounds are attracted to each other, your childhood wounds, and that you can use relationships now, I do for sure, to heal my wounds. Because when you get
Mhm. Mhm.
triggered, when you're doing inner work, you can recognize and you can discuss these things with your partner, and you can figure it out and you can heal your wounds. Um, when you get divorced, you usually first think that you're the victim in the story. And
Mhm.
so it takes some work, and that's what the spiritual divorce does, to show you that you co-created it. Sometimes you co-created it with actions, sometimes you co-created it with disempowering beliefs that are in your subconscious, sometimes you created it from wounds that you have. And once you start to do that work, you can stop being the victim in your story, and you can see how it all happened. What are the lessons? Because you don't
Mm.
want to do the same thing again.
And you've used this word victim, and I think that's a fascinating and often loaded word, because there's something about being a victim that does offer some degree of comfort. I'm an aggrieved party here, and therefore I'm worthy of others like sympathy and so on. And so there's a certain appeal to that. And so after having gone through this, did you find yourself kind of trapped in the victim mindset for some period of time?
Oh, yeah, for years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Not once I
and
started doing the work. Never
yeah,
again.
yeah,
Never again.
right, right, and
Spiritual
and so
gone.
right, yeah. So you were kind of trapped in this victim mindset, and for anybody out there that's listening who might be struggling with the same thing, because as you probably agree, like the victim mindset has some appeal. It has some draw because of what it offers us and because of the needs it can potentially meet to some degree. But of course, we can never be fully fulfilled as long as we remain trapped in a situation where we say, I'm powerless, and the situation is something that holds, power over me. But how do you start to dig yourself out of that victim mindset? And how do you, because again, there's something about when we have to, for lack of a better term, call ourselves out and say like I'm playing the victim here, and this is actually hurting me. How do we do that?
I'm not trying to plug coaching, but I am trying to plug coaching.
Plug it. I'm a coach too.
You can't do these things alone. I mean, my book actually is a step-by-step how to, how bigger, better, braver, conquer your fears, embrace your courage, and transform your life.
Yeah.
It's a step-by-step how to do it. But so you could do something like that. You could get some books and you could do things like that. But you need support and you need somebody to show you what it's costing you to
Yeah.
stay a
Interesting.
victim. Because I am not saying that like divorce is equal 50-50 and that somebody didn't do something to you. But I help you see that they did it for you. So I'm here today living a life that I would not have been living with either of those two men.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was going to be all about them. And
Yeah.
that's how it was for me. But you don't see it in the moment, and you don't see it when you're in the
Right.
deep dark muck of depression and sadness and overwhelm
Right.
and victimhood, especially if the man or the woman goes on to live a much bigger life and you can't even enjoy yourself because you're so busy looking on their side of the street. So
Yeah.
that's what I help people do is get on your side of the street and see how you co-created it, see what the gifts and what the lessons were so that you can move on and have a different life.
Well, we all have emotional blind spots. Things that, it's like try to describe the patch of skin between your shoulder blades.
Yeah.
Like, even with the mirror, it's incredibly awkward to try to, get some sort of visual on that.
Right.
But somebody else could walk and be like, oh, here's what you have going on here without any difficulty because they're not encumbered by your emotional luggage that you're carrying with you in a sense.
Mhm.
And so it's a valuable piece of insight. I often reference when I was in the military and we would do, let's say if there was a bomb threat and we had to search a space, we would bring two people into that space. And the first person, someone who's very, very familiar, who spends a lot of time in that space. And the second person that you bring in is someone who never spends any time in that space.
Interesting.
And that way, when you look at something, the person who is often who's very familiar with that space tends to easily overlook things because of a sense of familiarity. The
Right.
person who's never been in the space before can go, well, is that normal? Does that belong there? And so having that second set of eyes that is not because we fall into a pattern, right? We become very, very familiar with our sort of our day-to-day existence. So getting that other set of eyes that's not attached, that doesn't have that previous history, can be incredibly valuable. And so there's some sort of analogy to what it's like to be working with a coach when we see that.
Right. I like that a lot. I say that the only person in a room you can't clearly see is yourself.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I
So
like that.
we have a lot of disowned qualities that we don't recognize in ourselves, but we actually have them. Other people can see them, but we can't see them. So that's where that all comes from, working on your disowned qualities and trying to be more emotionally whole and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, one of the things that you've you touched on, not necessarily here, but is that fear can be a driving force for change. And I think that's a very interesting perspective because fear is, well, it's an emotion that we don't necessarily like or want to experience. So how do you see that as being something like that?
I think we all have fears, and I don't want to walk down a dark alley in a bad neighborhood at 2 a.m. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
the fear that I listen to.
Yeah.
But I have actually learned to cultivate my fear. So if there's something I'm afraid to do, I can tell myself I have to do it
Mhm.
because my growth is on the other side. So like I've been asked to build a couple of courses for different, organizations. And at first I'm, the imposter syndrome. Oh, they think you're bigger than you are. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And immediately I can say to myself, the moment I step in and build that course, I am that person.
Yeah.
And so I'm a double black diamond skier. I'm a big athlete. I know that I can keep doing more and keep growing and keep getting better and keep taking on new responsibilities and trying new things. And I don't let my fear or my imposter syndrome ever stop me. I go
Mm-hmm.
and be a presenter in different places and all of those things, they do cause fear You know,
Yeah.
our inner child wants to keep us small. And
Yeah. That's
so,
quite natural.
yeah, it is. It's what we do.
And I think it's really important to highlight that you're extremely accomplished as an author and a speaker and a coach and so on, but there's these fears still come up, and so I think what you're alluding to here is like there's certainly rational fears, like as the example you gave, walking down a dark alley at 2 a.m. Like it's just not a good idea. But on the same token, other fears that come up, they actually point us or really point us to exactly what it is that we should do, that we should face, and that we should move through the thing that we're afraid of. And how do you differentiate between, I guess, say those two types of fear?
Anything that's keeping you playing small is a fear you need to have compassion for and say, shut up and get in the back seat because we're going.
Yeah, yeah,
And every time you step outside your comfort zone and you try something new, the way you feel about yourself for trying something new is worth it. The juice is in the
mm,
journey. It's
I like
in
that.
yeah, it's in my book. It's
The
in
juice is in your journey.
this is the journey. But it's so true. People have fear of success, they have fear of failure, they
Mm,
have fear of looking stupid. To me, if I don't try any of those things, I already look stupid. Like,
right. Yeah.
it's already worse. I will feel worse about myself for not stepping in than I can ever feel for stepping in and failing. Because when
Right.
I fail or I fall, I'm falling forward. I gave it a
Right.
shot and I'm still growing. And it's a stepping stone for me. All right, what worked? What didn't work? How do I, lick my wounds and get back up and try it again? And what do I need to do differently? Who do I need to speak to? What
Yeah.
expertise do I not have? Maybe it's just not my time and I need more. I need to know more.
Yeah. Now, to bring it back to your personal story, because you now are in like a very satisfying and fulfilling relationship.
Mhm.
How did you meet this individual, and when did you know that this was different?
Well, I met him on online dating.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, how
and
about what a novel thing. You're in your mid 60s now, and I think the idea of online dating, because I mean, I grew up where I had the internet first when I was like 10 years old, so it showed up in my childhood. But you grew up in an era where it didn't exist in childhood,
no, but
so
it really, I coach my clients to be online dating. I don't think
right,
there's
yeah,
any other way to meet people. It's rare that you meet somebody because somebody hooked you up with somebody else. It's just rare.
yeah,
And you aren't really going out and sitting at a bar. Like, you're not doing those kinds of things. Online dating is introducing you to people who are supposedly looking for what you're looking for.
right. So it's a short
So,
circuit.
yeah, I'm very big on online dating. And
Yeah.
I met him. I was still in Aspen. He was in California. I was living in both places. So
Mhm.
we sort of we were emailing and texting for a couple of weeks before we ever had our first date. So we kind of really liked each other's minds and our style. We were both New Yorkers and we both liked the edge of that. And
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
so by our first date, we were in.
Yeah.
It was just like the cherry on top actually meeting.
Right, right. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic, and I think there's something really cool about this story too. Is that I think many people might have said, "Well, now it's too late for me.
Yeah.
My time has passed and past my prime, whatever it is." And you're saying, "Well, it's not true." You know.
I had an 81-year-old client whose wife had died, who
Mhm.
was really sad and lonely, and I got him back up and running and dating.
That's that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's you've got quite a story, and I can see why you do the work that you do, because of all these different experiences that you've been through. They've taken you to this place where exactly where you're at today. If you were to, people who've listened to this, one, I think they found it an interesting story, but what would you like people to take away from this conversation if you were to kind of offer them one nugget to take away?
I think that the last person in a race still beats the person on the couch,
I love that.
right?
Yeah.
You just have to get out of your comfort zone. Take bite-sized steps outside your comfort zone and prove to yourself that you can do it and you can do hard things.
I
And
love that.
again, the juice is in the journey.
I absolutely love that. I'm definitely gonna use that one, I think, in the future. So,
Are yours.
well, Nancy, thank you so much for being on today. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. It's been great fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become, and I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.